How does a mom of three go from being a journalist experiencing multiple layoffs to a published author? Find out today on the Bookshelf Odyssey. Welcome back to the Bookshelf Odyssey. My guest today is Liz Alterman. She's the author of the Audible original Sad Sacked, which is described as a very funny memoir about a very unfunny situation. She's also recently published The Perfect Neighborhood, which is a mystery thriller about a missing boy. This takes place in a deceptively described perfect neighborhood. Secrets are everywhere, and so here to share all of her secrets with us is Liz Alterman. Welcome, Liz, to the Bookshelf Odyssey podcast.
Hi, Art. Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, it's so great to have you on. And I was telling you earlier, I was reading right in the middle of The Perfect Neighborhood, and I am loving it. It is a really well done thriller. I'm left guessing left and right. So.
Oh, good. Thank you so much. That really is like music to an author's ears. I'm so happy and grateful for your support. Thank you for reading.
You bet. And as I was researching you, I must say I loved your bio that says when she isn't writing, Liz spends most days reading, microwaving the same cup of coffee, and looking up synonyms. So
Unfortunately, that's all true. I can
yes.
make the same cup of coffee last for about 6 hours. And let me tell you, it might not taste great by that third nuking, but if it saves me from making a fresh pot. But yes, and then the synonyms also. A lot of times I'll turn to my family and say, do you have another word for this? And they always say, what about this thesaurus? Which I feel like I always stumble over saying. But I'll say if I'm coming to you, I've already exhausted the thesaurus. So help me out.
There you are. Well, my wife will tease me all the time about falling asleep in my cup of coffee. You know, she said, you should try drinking that sometime and it might actually keep you awake.
Right. I know caffeine, it really affects people differently. Some people,
Right.
you can't have it after 4 or you're up all night. Other people can have a cup and nod right off. So
yeah, I'm kind of in the latter category there. Yeah.
funny.
So what kind of coffee do you like?
Oh, well, my aunt actually got me hooked on the pour over kind of coffee. So I'm very into my Chemex. And I have to say, being a writer, I have really no aptitude for math or science. But when I make this coffee, I feel like a chemist because, you're grinding your beans, you're setting it up, you pour it in. And I think the Chemex is a very attractive little apparatus. Although I will say I have accidentally broken a couple, which is a mess with the shattered glass. But I think it tastes great. So I'm hooked on that. How about you? Do you have a favorite?
Yeah, I'm pretty simple. I like Folgers in the Mr. Coffee. But when I just give myself a special treat, sometimes I'll go out to either Starbucks or Panera Bread has good coffee.
Oh, that's good.
And I typically just drink it black.
That's nice and easy.
Yeah, this time of year though, I like the pumpkin spice latte. So I've got
you gotta treat yourself.
So today I'm drinking some pumpkin spice creamer in my coffee today. So
that's fun. All right, now you've made me want one.
Oh, I love them, and it's the best time of year right now. So they're just starting to come out.
Exactly.
Always love meeting a new coffee friend. So that's always good. But we want to talk about your incredible journey from being laid off to kind of almost sounds like you just kind of took control of your life and kept going after your passion.
I tried, Art. I think that's a very generous way to put it. Thank you. I think there were a lot of desperate moments, which you would hear about in my memoir, but that's very true. I think going back to about 2002, when I had my first child, I was working full-time as an energy reporter. And when I returned from maternity leave, I had asked, could I maybe go down to a part-time schedule or could I work from home a few days? And, back then that was unheard of. Of course, now it would probably be no problem. But so I left and I tried then to kind of take a little bit of control back by doing some freelance writing and building up a portfolio. And so I guess by about 2012 or so, I was able to get full-time work again as a writer and editor. But then I was laid off in early 2014. and sort of plunged back into the freelance side of things. But it was really during that time that I thought I'd like to try my hand at writing a longer work. And that's when I decided, I'm sure, as you know, from checking out my bio, my husband was laid off 6 weeks before I was. And so we have a house and 3 kids and all the worries that go along with both
and
of
no
those.
income now. Yeah. Oh, great.
Exactly, the stress that goes hand in hand with all of that. So I sort of thought, this is such a crazy thing. What are the odds that this would happen to us at the same time? And also, it was just funny, or not really. I mean, it's funny in retrospect. It certainly wasn't funny at the time. But when we would mention it to people, it's almost like you're contagious. Like, I think job loss, especially since the pandemic, has become, unemployment's like almost it happens to everybody now. But going back 8 or 10 years, it wasn't as prevalent. And so people, when we'd say it, it was almost like, what's wrong with these two? Why can't they hold a job? And
Stay away.
Exactly. It was kind of shocking. Or, somebody might complain about something minor in their life, like maybe their washing machine broke, and then they'd say, what's new with you? And I'd say, well, Rich lost his job and then I lost mine. And it's kind of like a perspective builder, like maybe things aren't so bad. So I sort of thought, what about writing about this? Because it was just a shock to me. And then it's kind of like, if you scratch the surface and tell people you've lost your job, chances are somebody's going to say, oh, I remember when I was let go, and that was, such a shock and such a stressful period, and I didn't know when I'd find another one. And so I thought, I bet there's an audience for this.
Well, especially the last couple of years when there's been so much uncertainty, it's comforting to know somebody else is out there going through the same thing and can now laugh about it.
Right. I always say if I weren't laughing, I'd be crying. So.
Right. Sometimes both at the same time, though.
Right. Or drinking something stronger than coffee, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Get me through this. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, as we consider that, I do like to also ask my guests the really important question, which is, what's your favorite book?
Oh, that's such a great question. I guess I would say kind of a few, but I know one that I always recommend to people, and so far no one has ever been disappointed, is The Secret History by Donna Tartt, which I love. And I still sometimes, it's funny because I'll recommend it to people and they'll read it and they'll love it. And so many people will say, I can't believe this hasn't been made into a movie yet. So I kind of keep hoping if I keep spreading the word, eventually we'll get a movie. Yeah. And then another one I love is Music for Torching by A.M. Holmes. And I feel like it kind of is something, I guess, almost like without necessarily being a thriller or suspense or mystery, it kind of delves into sort of the uglier, seamier side of suburban America and just kind of domestic turmoil, if you will. So I enjoy, and she has a great dark sense of humor, which I enjoy.
Yeah, perfect.
Right.
Well, I was going to say, no, that sounds a little bit like at least where your latest book is going, and kind of peeling back the secrets of suburbia, as it were, and seeing that.
Right.
I have to tell you, I was walking around the neighborhood yesterday, and I'm starting to think, I wonder what kind of secrets are going on around here.
Sure. Yeah, you never know.
You got me paranoid now.
As long as no one's eyeing you suspiciously, right? Like you'd rather be the one keeping an eye out. Than...
Right. Well, I'm not going to be the guy, sitting in my house with the binoculars, but
right.
You got to wonder now. Yeah.
Yeah. You never know what's going on behind closed doors.
Right. I had a friend whose dad was a police officer, and he used to say that the calls he feared the most were the domestic disturbance calls. He said, give me a drug dealer any day, because he said with those domestic calls, you just never know what you're walking into.
I'm sure. Right. Yeah. That's got to be so scary.
Yeah. He said, plus with the fact that they know each other so well, it just seems to add to the tension. And
right.
Yeah. He said, no, just never enjoyed those.
No, it has to be awful. And I mean, so many times it's so hard for someone to break that cycle. So I'm sure they probably have repeat calls, unfortunately. And that has to be so hard to know that you can't necessarily get that person out if they're not leaving of their own free will.
Right. Yeah. And that's the other, even darker side of that. And the more serious side of that too, is people are trapped and they would leave, but where do I go? How do I deal with this? What happens to me if I leave? And yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Unfortunately. Yeah. Yeah.
And there are so many thrillers out there now that deal with exactly that sort of, being either held against your will or wanting to go and not necessarily having that option or a safe option.
So I guess this took a sad turn, but no, it's good. No, I mean, obviously, if you're in that position, reach out to someone and look for help. Help is there. I would hope so anyway. And yeah. Well, and I think that's partly what makes these stories so tense and so realistic, is because that happens. It can happen.
I think so too. I think for me, like I'll always say, you can watch something on television like a Stranger Things or like a Freddy Krueger, but that's not nearly as frightening to me as if somebody said like, there's someone hiding in your shower right now. Do you know what I mean? Like a neighbor or someone who followed you home from the grocery store. Even earlier this summer, I went to have just a small repair done on my car. And when I got home, I thought my house key is no longer on my key ring. Where did that go? And it turned out to just be a misunderstanding within the family. But also one night I was watching television and I think my husband was out of town, and I could see this car in the parking lot behind the house. And when you're in those situations where you can see out, but you don't know how much they can see in, and do they have a better vantage point in the dark? And like my mind I guess it's probably the writer in me, just kind of started spinning and like, oh my gosh, am I safe? What's going to happen? And so for me, it's those types of things that could really happen to you that are much more frightening than, let's say, like an asteroid hitting my house or, an alien popping out of my shed. I'll take those any day over just your random stranger.
Well, I have 2 teenage boys and they pop out of their bedrooms. Sometimes it's frightening. It's like, whoa, hey.
Right. That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can relate.
How, I guess what age are your kids now?
They're 20, 17, and 15.
Oh, okay. That's right around my kids' age. Neat.
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
My oldest is 19. Then I have a almost 18-year-old, and then an 8th grade girl. So
oh wow,
they're fun. So fun.
That is fun.
Yeah. Now that they are mostly independent,
Right. Yes, that helps a lot.
Yeah.
I have boys, so my oldest would always insist that we play Thomas the Tank Engine, but for some reason I was never, my train engineer voices were not up to snuff. My track laying abilities were not good enough. So it was like, not only I wasn't getting the adult conversation, I was also getting a lot of criticism. I wasn't Sir Topham Hatt correctly.
Oh my, yeah. My oldest son especially loved Thomas. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Right. You're not doing the Percy voice right.
Right. Come on, Dad. So how did you make that transition to writing? What was that journey like for you as you were, putting these thoughts to paper? And I think you actually, was Sad Sack your first book, or did you have one before that?
Well, it was actually, I guess it was the first full-length work that I wrote, but just to give you a little bit on the ugly path to publication, I guess I had written it. It took me about 2 years to write it. And then I was very fortunate. I found a lovely agent who believed in the story. She had worked as an agent, and but I guess she could really relate to that stress of potentially losing your job. And she was funny. She was saying she was reading the manuscript, I guess on a Friday afternoon, and her husband came home early from work, and she was like, "What are you doing here? Have you been let go? Why are you home in the middle of the day?" And so I said, all right, I'm glad there was that tension there. But this was about 2017. And so she went out with it to larger publishing houses. And unfortunately, we just couldn't find a home for it. We were told that, I wasn't a celebrity. I didn't have an enormous platform. People were complimentary. They thought it was a unique story, but they didn't know how to break it out. And then we also heard, the economy's in great shape. Anybody who wants a job can have a job, which I would argue is not really true. Those are sort of your, gig economy jobs. Like if you'd like to be an Uber driver, or if you'd like to deliver something, which is wonderful that those options are out there, but it's not like you can truly leave a full-time with benefits job and then have the same, maintain that same life that you've had if you had a family on those gig things that have no healthcare or different options like that. So long story short, we couldn't sell it and we went our separate ways, and I started working on something new. And then a friend of mine had written a thriller and had an agent, and they were shopping it around, and we were just chatting about places her agent had sent it. And my friend said to me, have you ever thought about the Audible pitch portal for your memoir? And I said, no, I hadn't even heard of it. And so I went and I looked it up, and it was funny because at that point I just thought, this thing is going to live forever in my hard drive or my iCloud. It's never going to get out in the world. And I sort of was at that point kind of at peace with it, because I felt like we had tried as hard as we could to sell it. And I had written essays, hoping that somebody would see it and be interested, and just didn't happen. So I sent it, and I just was kind of chalking it up to like, here's another 30 minutes of my life. I'm filling in all the blanks on this form. And sure enough, about a month later, I was contacted by someone at Audible saying our editor liked it and would like to have a call with you. And, I had to reread that about a dozen times to make sure it wasn't like a prank, like one of my kids, setting up a fake email address just to like, let's give mom one last confidence there. But so I had a lovely call with the editor, and they acquired it. And so it was very exciting to see it, kind of get a new life. And I sort of think now that things have unfortunately taken the turns that they have with the pandemic, and so many, I feel like we read about layoffs in the news every day. I hope that, not that I hope there's an audience out there, but I hope it provides some comfort to people who are now in that situation.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's even just knowing somebody out there knows what I'm going through, and I'm not alone on this. And yeah.
Right. It is. It's nice because I had started it as a blog, mainly like I joke that it was kind of like a diary of my descent into madness, as I just kept getting rejection after rejection as I applied for new jobs. But I guess, and I never, even my son, sometimes when I would post something on the blog, my oldest has like a good eye for photography or something. So before I'd post a top photo, I would show him a few choices, and he would say, oh, come on, Mom, it doesn't really matter. Nobody's reading this. And so I know.
Thanks.
So then, thanks, right. So then, but I will get messages, mainly through LinkedIn, of people saying, I was laid off and I found your blog, and either asking for advice or just wanting to commiserate. And I think, you know what, like sometimes I'll write and I'll be like, oh, should I be embarrassed that I'm kind of like just bearing my soul and, kind of sharing the dark side? And I think if it helps one other person, I know when I was in that situation, if somebody had said to me, yes, I'm up at 3 a.m., like foraging through my fridge, eating like, cheese and plastic wrappers just as comfort food, trying to feel better about life. Like I would have embraced it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Would you have any words of encouragement to somebody who might be, laid off and just can't find a job?
I would say try to separate that from it. It's very difficult, but try to separate it from like your identity or your self-esteem or your self-worth. Because I think, unfortunately, in the US, I think whenever you go somewhere, one of the first questions someone asks is, what do you do? And so it's reinforcing that I am what I do. And then when you lose what you do, it's like you've lost this chunk of yourself. But I think if you go to other parts of the world, they might say like, where have you traveled recently? Or have you read a good book? Or, are you listening to a great podcast? And so I think, and I feel like I am proof of this, that there's always time to reinvent yourself. And maybe you loved what you did and you can further your education in that field or your experience. Or maybe if you didn't love it, this can be like a time to hit a restart button and find something that you do love. But I would say just, especially in today's economy, like it's definitely not personal. I think so many companies, they had to lay off, they had to rehire. Now they have to shift again and pivot and figure, do we need all the people we just took back on? So I think in this case, it's nothing to take personally. It's more just sort of the nature of the beast at this point.
But yeah, you're right. So much of our identity can come from our work. and then when that's taken away, well, who am I now? And
Exactly.
well, I'm going to be a stay-at-home dad is what I'm going to be.
Right.
And that means I can just sit around and eat food all day, right?
Right, exactly.
No, not quite.
Nothing,
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. I mean,
Oh, okay.
until you want something different for yourself, right?
Sure. So you got your memoir published, and then what made you make a transition to writing the thriller, or is that the one that you wrote before Sad Sacked?
After I wrote Sad Sacked, then I wrote a young adult thriller called He'll Be Waiting.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I had always wanted to write a novel, or to try to write a novel. And I think I always sort of talked myself out of it, thinking of, how do you get to 90,000 words? I could maybe get to 2,000 for a freelance piece or something, but how would I get that far? And so I think in writing the memoir, I sort of showed myself that, like, with time and discipline, you can do it. So I had an idea, and I sort of thought, okay, I'm gonna give it a go. And then I don't know about your children, but mine can be very reluctant readers, especially my middle son. Unless if I were the Diary of the Wimpy Kid guy, then they're all in for Jeff Kinney, but not, or Rick Riordan, but not anything that I might send their way. But so I sort of said to them, if I tried this, would you guys proofread it as I go? And so my middle son especially is one who's hard to get to read. And so I would share chapters with him, and then he would say, all right, what happens next? Do you have more? Do you have more? And so that kind of kept me going. And I thought, like, okay, if he's willing to read, I'm willing to write. So I kind of kept going that way.
No, that's neat. And then you kind of turned it into a family project then.
Right. And now they're so sick of it, they don't want to hear it.
I don't want it anymore.
Right, like, close that factory down.
Right. So then, like I said, I'm reading The Perfect Neighborhood. That book just came out in July, I believe.
It did, yes.
So now what made you transition from young adult to maybe a more adult themed thriller?
I guess I'm kind of guided by whatever idea kind of strikes me or interests me. And so the idea for this story kind of came to me in a dream. I woke up and I kind of had the beginning of the plot, the end of the plot, not unfortunately the middle of the plot. But,
details.
Right, exactly. So I kind of sat with it for a little while, just thinking, is this the idea I want to go with? Is this what I'd like to pursue? And, like, before I sat down to write anything, I could just kind of feel like the characters fleshing themselves out kind of in my mind, or different twists that the plot could take. And so then, after waiting maybe about 6 months, I sat down and started drafting it. And that once I sat down to do it, I felt like, okay, I'm all in. I really want to see this to the end.
Mm-hmm. Now, and I should have checked. Now, are your books self-published, or did you go through a publisher?
I've gone through a publisher.
Okay.
I was very fortunate. My young adult was published by a company called Between the Lines, and they're a small indie press, but they've been wonderful, really supportive, and we're in touch all the time. I was also fortunate that I just sold the audiobook rights to Blackstone, and so the young adult thriller will be out as an audiobook just in time for Halloween. So I'm excited about that. And then The Perfect Neighborhood is published by Crooked Lane in the US, and then Legend Press in the UK bought the rights. So it's out in the UK with a slightly different cover. So that was fun to see different visions of it.
Right. Now, I'm listening to the audiobook of The Perfect Neighborhood, and I love it that there's different narrators for it, and really helps you keep track of characters a little better. And I don't know, it's just really working for me. So
Oh, good. I'm so happy to hear it. And I have to say, I am just so blown away by the talent of the cast. When I heard it, it felt like something that I hadn't written. Like, it seemed like a whole new work. And it was just really exciting to hear them bring the characters to life.
Mm-hmm. I wrote a little, it was for another podcast, and they invited their listeners to write in like a couple paragraphs of a topic. So I did and sent it in, and they read mine, and
Oh,
I'm like,
that's
wow,
great.
that sounds a lot better than I remember it being. Just
Right.
hearing it read by somebody else who reads well, and I'm like, oh, that's neat. Yeah, just hearing your creation come to life like that, it's got to be exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is really neat. And I think too, we're, I don't know about you, but I'm such a harsh critic of my
Mm-hmm.
own writing that I think sometimes, like, I love to read when my boys were little. I love reading books to them and doing different voices and whatever. But when it's your own writing, I think you're a lot more guarded or self-conscious. Or when I read aloud, I'll think, oh, you could have phrased that so much better. Or, you've overused this word. Why didn't you find a better word? And so it kind of trips you up and it impacts the delivery.
Right.
Whereas I think these people have such a talent for narration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I notice if I'm writing something, my favorite words seem to be very and really.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. And just, yeah. I'm a big one.
Yeah.
Like, if I go back and do that search for just, I'm like, okay, get rid of all of these.
Yeah. Now, I'm really excited if I say it's just very, really excited,
Exactly.
I'm going to use all three of those. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's where you got to break out your thesaurus or ask your family.
Absolutely.
I need a synonym.
Right.
Right. So what's the next project for you coming up?
Oh, thanks for asking. I'm trying to kind of figure that out at the moment. I wrote another domestic suspense manuscript, and it's in, I guess, the inbox of my editors, and I'm hoping that they love it. I'm hoping it becomes a book, but I've been joking that the suspense is killing me, just waiting waiting to see if they enjoyed the
Nice.
suspense. But
yeah.
No.
All right. Well, and the I guess your most recent one is just still newly published, just about a month or two ago. So I know those things take time to see the light of day.
They do. Yeah. Just, I guess in that case, maybe about a year, I would say, from signing the contract to seeing it out in the world.
Yeah. No, that's got to be, I don't know, that's got to be pretty anxious, just to like, I've got this perfect story. Now everyone needs to read it. When is it going to be out?
I know it is hard. It is hard. And I guess there are so many great books out there too, that you're always thinking, like, is anybody going to find, are readers going to find it? Is it going to kind of get lost in the shuffle? Or so I really appreciate, what you do to kind of shine a spotlight on authors and books and share that with audiences. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I really want to, like you said, you're going through an indie publisher kind of thing, and finding more of those writers who are just would be able to hold a candle to the ones that are selling like crazy today, but just nobody has heard of them. So yeah, right. Definitely tapping into my passion there to find y'all.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Oh, good. But yeah, this again, The Perfect Neighborhood is, it is very well written, a wonderful story. I wouldn't have had you on if I didn't like it. So.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
No, but if I didn't like it, I wouldn't tell you anyway. So.
Right. I was going to say.
No, I'm not that mean of a podcaster. So. So tell me about your garbage story. No.
Right.
Right. Yeah. No. So yeah, it's on sale now. Get it on Audible. Your Sad Sacked is on Audible. I have a subscription to Audible, so and they said it was free. It was
yes, it's in their Audible Plus catalog, I believe. So
sure. Well, I had a question, and maybe it's a personal one. I don't. We can cut it out, but so it's free for me to listen to. Do you get paid for that, or how does that work?
I accepted a flat fee.
Okay.
From Audible. And so as opposed to, let's say The Perfect Neighborhood, I'll get royalties as copies sell. But for Sad Sack, no, I took one flat fee. And it's interesting because and maybe if there are writers listening, I think it's interesting because I'm a member of the Authors Guild. And what's nice about that is that you can send them legal contracts and they will sort of vet them for you and give you advice. And it's free as part of your membership, which is wonderful. And so when the legal expert came back to me, he was saying, it's like almost like a gamble. If you don't know, maybe nobody will download this and listen to it, and then you've won by taking this lump sum. But if this goes on to become like a sensation and you receive no royalties, you'll kick yourself. But so I said, you know what, I'm taking the gamble, and it's been good. Of course, I don't know, I don't know what it could have been, but yeah. I've been very happy to work with them.
Good. Okay. Yeah, I was just curious about that because, I want to help support, the authors and all that, and these companies tend to have enough money, more than they can.
That's true. Yeah.
I don't want to diss Audible at all. I mean, it's my favorite audiobook platform. So.
Oh, good. It is. I've just recently kind of gotten into audiobooks. I guess because being home and having my kids home through the pandemic, I felt like if I tried to listen, somebody was always interrupting, and then I'd be rewinding all the time. But now I'm going out, I'm trying to take a lot more walks or listen in the car when it's quiet. Yeah. And I love it. It's so nice to have that to return to, and like, okay, I'm up to this chapter, I'm going to get back into this world.
I tend to listen if I'm, working out on the treadmill or going for a walk or a hike or something. I really like hiking and listening to an audiobook while I'm doing it. It's I get a lot of reading done that way. So
that's great.
Yeah. So another question I wanted to ask you, just book related, is have you read anything recently that you'd like to share with us?
Oh, thank you. Well, I can share two things. One, I just listened to Thank You for Listening by Julia Whalen, which I would highly recommend it, because it's lighthearted. Well, not totally all the time lighthearted or thoroughly lighthearted, but there's a lot of humor in it, and it's about an audiobook narrator and kind of her life, and there are parts of it that are very touching about her grandmother. So and Julia Whalen, I was new to her, but I guess she is very well known in the voice actor community. She's wonderful. The voices, she does an Irish brogue, she does her grandmother's voice. It's just, she really makes these characters, you wouldn't even think it's the same person. She's amazing. And then in terms of books that I've read, I just finished one called Just Like Mother, which I enjoyed a lot. I was fortunate to be on a reading panel with the author Anne Heltzel earlier this summer, and it follows cousins who grew up in a cult, and then they are separated, and then they reconnect as adults. And it's definitely, it has some creepy moments. So I don't know, if you're brave, maybe listen while you're hiking. And
I'm out here by myself. This is fine.
Right.
Is somebody behind me now? Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, perfect. No, I love the, I'm not into like the real gross horror kind of stuff, but I love especially the more of the psychological kind of thriller stories. Yeah, those, when my brain is just really engaged with those. Yeah. As we wrap things up here, if you could give even just one tip to beginning writers, what tip or word of encouragement would you give them?
I would say don't give up. I would say not to take rejections personally, unless someone has given you feedback that you find really useful and helpful. But I would say what's kind of helped me is to think I think a lot of it is almost like luck and timing, that what you present to somebody kind of hits them when they're in the right mood on the right day. So I think you never know what they've recently just read that might be too similar to yours, or maybe they're thinking, I'm saturated with this, I'm looking for this now. So I would say, I know a lot of people, especially, I guess, even writers that I've been in workshops with, they get easily discouraged after a few rejections. And I mean, I know it does sting, and it is easy to say, like, why am I doing this? I could be spending my free time another way. But I think if it's a dream and a goal of yours, I would say, something I try to do is when I get a rejection, unless there's actionable feedback that can make that piece better, I try to turn around and send it right back out again. Just, it's almost like trying to go from that like, oof, downswing to kind of like, okay, I'm back up again. I'm going to err on the side of hope and hope this finds a home. And you never know.
Yeah. It's funny how similar that is even to like podcasting or something, because it's a real easy temptation to watch the download numbers and say, oh, how come I don't have very many downloads? This episode is genius. Come on,
Right,
but
it is.
it takes a while, when you find your audience, and then it takes a while to grow a good audience. And, it just takes time, and it's easy to give up when you don't see you got these other channels or whatever that have the millions of downloads. And,
Right.
let's be fair, we're not celebrities, so
Not yet.
not yet. Yeah. We're not going to get those
know.
instant audience downloads, but yeah, it's, for me, it just comes back to, how would I view success, and to keep going to reach maybe the goals I have,
Right.
and then to always try to do better and improve and everything, that you can just build on what you've done and learn from, even learn from past rejections, as painful as they can be sometimes. You can,
Right.
like what you said, yeah, what can I learn from this? And is this criticism fair, or are they don't know genius when they read it,
Right. Yeah. Or like, have you
Yeah.
hit them on the wrong day? I think so
Right.
too. I think also if it's something that you love, then it should, I try to remind myself of that too, that it's like, I'm doing this because I love it. Like, I love those moments when you write something that you like, or when your brain surprises you with like a plot twist you didn't see coming, or a character kind of, their voice kind of comes to you more clearly. I think it's like those magical moments that, to me, okay, if I have to suffer a bunch of rejections, like I don't want to lose that hobby or that, passion of mine just because somebody else said no.
Mm-hmm. If you only focus on that, you'll quickly discourage yourself. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Just keep going, keep at it. Definitely. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you again for coming on and
Thank you, Art.
giving your time. So where can folks find you online if they want to follow you?
Oh, thank you. I'm pretty much on, I guess, Twitter and Instagram at Liz Alterman. And then I also have a website, lizalterman.com, where my email address is at the bottom if anyone would like to reach out. And I like to say to people, if anyone chooses any of my books as a book club, for their book club, I have book club questions on my website. And I'm also always happy to Zoom or Skype in. As I say, for as little or as long as you'll have me, I will pop into your living room and try to answer any questions.
I love technology, tell you what.
I know it is. I have to say though, I Zoomed into a book club, and the members were fantastic. They were absolutely lovely, but they, I guess, were seated far from the screen. And so I couldn't really see them well. And they said, "We have you up on our giant flat screen." And I said, "Oh my God, I would have put on more makeup. I didn't know, so I just thought, like, God, I hope I don't look like E.T. in a blonde wig on this giant flat screen." But so.
Yeah.
So that was like kind of, if I could be everywhere in person, I would like that. But technology has given us a range of opportunities we didn't think we'd have before. So,
even from podcasting to vlogging to whatever, just the potential is enormous. So
it really is.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Liz, for coming on. And again, everyone, run out to your bookstore, however you get books, and get The Perfect Neighborhood, get that Audible subscription so you can hear her novel or her memoir as well. And Liz, thank you again so much for coming on.
Thank you, Art. It was such a pleasure.
All right. You take care.
You too. Thanks.